The Speaker, Femi Gbajabiamila, in an address at the commencement of plenary, commended the federal government for setting up the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, adding that the lockdown and curfew are necessary interventions.
The commitment and dedication of members of the House of Representatives to nation building. Thank you very much. Good morning, honorable colleagues, and I welcome you all to this session of the House of Representatives, and thank you for being here. We have convened here in unusual circumstances in keeping with these extraordinary times. We are a nation at war, battling an unseen enemy. Besotted on all sides, we fight on, unbroken and unbowed. Honorable members, the arrival of the deadly coronavirus on our shores threatens the same consequences as if we were besieged by the terror of armed conflict. Though our struggle is not against bullets and bombs, our conditions are not any less dire. We are determined to survive through these trying times, and our resolve to triumph in this immediate course is absolute. In the 1 month since we last sat in session, the coronavirus has infected over 1,000 of our fellow countrymen, 40 of whom have passed on. Our hearts are heavy with the burden of loss, but the House of Representatives extends sincere condolences to the families who have lost loved ones. We pray for the peaceful repose of their dearly departed and wish the bereaved families the fortitude to bear the loss. The necessary precautions we must take to prevent further spread of this disease means that the bereaved cannot mourn the dead in the manner of our traditions, thus compounding the heartache. I pray to God Almighty that this too shall pass, and we will in due time remember the fallen and celebrate their lives as is befitting. The government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has thus far responded to the present challenges with equanimity. The House applauds His Excellency, President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, for appointing a presidential task force on COVID-19, composed of some of the best and brightest of our nation. The members of the task force have risen to the assignment and proven themselves worthy. We thank them, and we encourage them to remain committed and to act always in the best interest of the Nigerian people. We especially recognize the Director General of the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, Dr. Chikwe Ihekwezu, whose calm and steady presence has been a comforting constant. We also recognize the Chairman of the Task Force, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, for his work in ensuring that the task force remains committed to its mandate in the service of the Nigerian people. The restrictions imposed on our people as a result of the lockdown of Lagos and Ogun State and the Federal Capital Territory and the curfews imposed by other state governments are a necessary intervention. These restrictions are a marked departure from the norm, and many of our people are understandably having a hard time adjusting. Honorable colleagues, as leaders in your constituencies, you must ensure that the people in your local communities understand the reasons for those restrictions and adhere to all preventive measures, such as hand washing, social distancing, and other guidelines set up by the Nigerian Center for Disease Control. Our best hope is to prevent the massive outbreak of this disease in Nigeria. If we fail to do that, and this disease begins to transmit at scale, all our worst nightmares will become manifest for once, and our misfortunes will compound beyond our ability to respond. We will be left to seek our recovery. Many have postulated that our current approach to managing this pandemic will not yield the results we desire. It has been suggested that we should look at other alternatives in dealing with this virus, alternatives that are more suited to our economic structure and cultural makeup, and are custom-made to our way of life. Recommendations have also been made to the effect that we should lift the lockdown, open up the economy with restrictions, including the compulsory wearing of masks in public places. We will consider all these recommendations and more Whichever way we go, the total defeat of this virus must be our immediate goal and our highest priority. The commendable palliative schemes initiated by the administration have helped alleviate the sufferings of some of our most vulnerable populations. However, many of our people have not benefited from any of the implemented measures. It is necessary that we act to ensure that as many people as need help are reached, and we must also ensure that the distribution of interventions across the country is inclusive and equitable. At times like this, there is a tendency for the existing fault lines of a nation to become dangerously exacerbated. The government must not be complicit by acts of omission or commission in any such aggravations, as such will only make it more difficult to maintain the unity of purpose that is essential to our nation's survival at this delicate time. Let me also, at this time, call on the administration to take advantage of the unique insights of federal legislators in targeting the distribution of some essential palliatives. When federal government interventions do not reach those that need, we are first to receive complaints and have to explain to our constituents the reason why they do not qualify or why they have been left out. Our grassroots interactions provide knowledge and context that can be useful to ensure that the hardest hit communities receive help. We intend to bring these unique perspectives in our ongoing work to codify the National Social Investment Program into a bill that will be considered by the House at our next adjourned date. We will also at that time seek to pass a second economic stimulus bill to provide necessary relief to individuals and corporate organizations in Nigeria. We expect that before then, the Senate will quickly consider and pass the first economic stimulus bill, which has since passed in the House and now awaits concurrence by the Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, the shutdown of commercial activities initiated here at home and abroad to curb community transmission of COVID-19 has devastated the global economy. We have already begun to see the effect in millions of lost jobs, lost incomes, lost revenue, and severely diminished productivity. In the past week, we saw oil prices fall into negative value. Our country, heavily dependent on crude oil income, has seen a drop in our revenue so severe that we risk failing to meet even the most basic obligation of governance. At a time when the social welfare demands on the public purse are higher than they have ever been, our present reality calls for nothing short of a wholesale reform of our governing structures, systems, and processes. Any such efforts must of necessity begin with drastic reductions in the cost of governance, coupled with determined efforts to drive economic diversity and innovation in the non-oil sector. It is in preparing for this new reality that I have established a post-COVID-19 strategic response team with a broad mandate to develop interventions and reforms and also to update the legislative agenda to reflect our post-COVID realities and priorities. The strategic response team will be supported by a group of technical experts, private sector leaders, and representatives. Their experience and expertise will ensure that the policy proposals presented to the House are rigorously grounded in a fact-based reality. There are no longer any sacred cows, protected spaces, or classes. Even every area of our national health policy, economic policy, tax policy, education policy, and security architecture are now on the table for reform. We must turn this moment of profound crisis into an opportunity to make the hard choices we have too long deferred, but can now no longer avoid if we are to survive as a nation. This House of Representatives is ready, and I trust that we will find allies in government and across our country who are prepared to make the changes that our country needs to survive, recover, and thrive. As we contend with the challenges of this pandemic and an economy in decline, we must not lose sight of the plight of our citizens in foreign lands who suffer stigma, harassment, and abuse in the hands of their hosts. A few weeks ago, the House intervened in the matter of Nigerian nationals in dire circumstances in China. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jeffrey Onyema, has been consistent in his defense of the rights of Nigerians abroad, and the House commends his efforts. Yet, Despite his efforts and the assurances given to the House by the Chinese ambassador in Nigeria, there are still reports of ongoing mistreatment of Nigerians in China. I call once more on the government of the People's Republic of China to ensure that Nigerians and people of African descent resident in China receive the human rights protections to which all citizens of the world are entitled. These are the same rights and privileges the people of China receive in foreign lands, including here in Nigeria. Where there are credible cases of discrimination, harassment, or rights abuses against our citizens, swift and visible action must be taken by the Chinese authorities to safeguard lives, livelihoods, property, and the sense of human dignity of Nigerians and fellow Africans. Extrajudicial punishments, including unlawful evictions or detention of persons of color under the guise of quarantine, are not acceptable to us. Any abuse of human rights or departures from the structures of international law betrays our shared humanity and calls for the most stringent and globally coordinated response if it persists. Here at home, we are immensely proud of our fellow citizens who have in the last month shown kindness and empathy beyond anything anybody could have imagined. All over this great land, without being asked, people have extended assistance to friends, family, and strangers alike in ways big and small. The private sector-led Coalition Against COVID, otherwise known as CACOVID, has raised enormous sums to assist the efforts of the federal government and state governments in providing healthcare access, food supplies, and other palliatives. Citizens have committed substantial personal resources to provide cash grants, food, and medicine. As a nation, we have set aside mundane considerations and shown that our capacity for brotherhood may well be limitless. It is this, more than anything else, that assures me that we will overcome our current challenges and emerge stronger and better than we ever were. On this note, I salute all our honorable colleagues for your contributions to the welfare and well-being of your constituents in these challenging times. The reports thus far received of your individual efforts have been laudable, and I thank you on behalf of all the Nigerian people. As we deliberate today, let our utterances be guided principally by the desire to bring forth ideas that will improve our nation's ability to rise to the challenge of the times. Let us speak with the recognition that this is no time for politics or the consideration of minor things. This is a time for selfless service, for courage and determination to make the critical decisions necessary to survive this pandemic and shape a better future for us. Honorable colleagues, none of us expected that our tenure of service will include these extraordinary times. We did not foresee the challenges we now face and must overcome. But we know that this is a time for statesmen who are willing to do what is hard and make the difficult choices from which greatness is born. I call on this honorable House to, with one accord, boldly act in whatever ways we must to protect our people from the immediate ravages of hunger, disease, death, and economic devastation. Let us see to it that when the verdict of posterity is delivered, it will be kind to us. In reconvening the House today, we have sought the guidance of health professionals and the Nigerian Center for Disease Control. The legislative role in a democracy is essential, and we do not have the option of sitting on the sidelines, particularly at this critical time. We have taken adequate steps to make sure we comply with the guidelines and protocol as put in place by the Nigerian Center for Disease Control and the World Health Organization. This present crisis brings to the fore the need to update our rules and practices in the National Assembly to allow for more effective use of technological tools that aid remote working. In the interim, committees of the House should continue with relevant and practical oversight work while observing strict guidelines. I thank you all once more for being here today, and I welcome you back to the chambers. I pray for God's mercy and wisdom to guide us through these times. God bless you all, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The motion from House Leader Alhassan Ado Doguwa on the health crisis in Kano State and the need to urgently implement presidential directives on the matter was supported by House members.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. My respected colleagues, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Alhassan Ado Dogwa is my name. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I represent the people of Dogwa, Chudunwada Federal Constituency from Kano State. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ride on the leverage of the order of our House, Order 8, Rule 4, to come on a matter of urgent national importance, on a matter for the need for an urgent intervention on the rising spate of unexplained deaths occurring in Kano State, and the need for reinforcement of the COVID-19 response initiative to combat community transmission across the Federation. Mr. Speaker, in the second leg of my motion, I would also like to crave the indulgence of this honorable House to allow us to suspend relevant rule and allow me to take the motion immediately. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, thank you. I so move.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion as ably moved by the House Leader. I so second.
Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it. Leader.
Let me once again say that, Mr. Speaker, for purposes of clearance, that this is a motion that will be discussed at the level of leadership, and is given Kano only as a case study, but it's a motion that has every intent, every good intent to every other state that is affected by COVID-19 one way or the other. It is therefore a motion for and on behalf of each and every one of us here, and I beg your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, that at the end of my submission, every other member, especially as perhaps the state caucus leaders, should also be allowed to speak and give us their own experience, which I believe is part of the reasons why we reconvene to address this serious problem, just for the purposes of clearance. And I therefore read.
I'm not sure we'll be able to allow that many state caucuses. That's 36 people debating the motion. So I think the motion will more than likely be very clear, but I think with you and 3-4 people should be enough to carry the motion. Yes, so go ahead.
The House notes that index COVID-19 case was recorded in February 27, 2020. Aware that the country has so far recorded 1,337 confirmed cases of COVID-19, 40 days cases, and 255 recoveries. Equally mindful that federal government has released the sum of 5 billion aware that country has so far recorded 1,337 confirmed cases of COVID-19, 40 test cases, and 255 recoveries. Equally mindful that the federal government has released the sum of 5 billion to the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, to scale up capacity and strategize rapid response to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. Worried by the rising spate of unexplained deaths in Kano State in recent weeks, where 77 COVID-19 cases and 1 death case have been recorded in less than 2 weeks. Aware that Kano State, being the most populated state of the Federation and a cosmopolitan city, according to the National Population Commission, has only one testing center which has been shut down for about a week now, reportedly due to lack of some testing materials and reagents. Concerned that Nigeria has so far tested a paltry number of 10,918,000 of estimated 200 million population, whereas Ghana, South Africa, and Egypt, which with much lower population have tested over 168,622 cases, and 90,000 of their people respectively. Aware that Nigeria currently has the capacity of 3,000 tests in a day, whereas the South Africa has nearly 10,000 test capacity per day. Concerned concern that Nigeria has only 15 testing centers on one each in Kano, Sokoto, Borno, Kaduna, Plateau, Osun, Edo, and Ebonyi states, 2 in the FCT and 3 in Lagos state. Conscious of the fact that whereas sample collections and transportation remain a critical challenge in Nigeria's fight against COVID-19, according to NCDC, Ghana has since engaged the services of drone technology to the delivery of samples to help save lives more quickly, and drones also have the capacity to deliver test kits and personal protection equipment. Convinced of the urgent need to arrest the rising cases of unexplained deaths in Kano State and also scale up national response initiative to the coronavirus pandemic, including the establishment of at least one testing center in every state of the Federation to save the nation from the grave scenario being witnessed today in Kano State. Appreciate the actions taken by the Federal Republic of Nigeria as contained in the recent national broadcast by the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari. The House resolves that to summon the DG NCDC, Honorable Minister, and Chairman of the Presidential Task Force to appear before it at plenary on Tuesday, May 5, 2020, to brief it on government response initiative to the COVID-19 pandemic and its template for the intervention in all the states of the Federation. Urge the federal government to, as a matter of urgency and priority, scale up the nation's COVID-19 testing capacity nationwide. Call on the NCDC to adopt creatively proactive modern approaches and technologies in the management of COVID-19 pandemic. 4, to investigate the immediate and remote causes of the unexplained huge number of deaths in Kano State and other affected states. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I so move.
My name is Mohamed Tahir Monguno. I represent Martin Monguno, Ganze Federal Constituency of Borno State. I second the motion ably moved by the Leader of the House.
Leader.
Thank the Honorable Speaker and indeed the members of the House for allowing me this opportunity to not only relay my experience and the experience of the people of Kano State on these green chambers, but to also share in grief the widespread crisis of COVID-19 in the nation. Your Excellency, the Speaker, right honorable members, the case we have in Kano today is worrisome. The case we have in Kano at hand, Mr. Speaker, is alarming. Some people call it disaster. Some others call it a calamity. Mr. Speaker, I want to say, based on my personal experience of what is actually happening in the state, that the case at hand in Kano is not only a disaster. It is not only calamitous, Mr. Speaker, it is catastrophic. It is catastrophic, not only going by the number of days we record on daily basis, the huge number of human lives that we lost, especially to a disease that is yet unknown. Of course, notwithstanding, Mr. Speaker, some of the deaths we recorded may not be unrelated or unconnected with the COVID-19 infection. But it is believed, even by the medical professional in the state, that there must be something behind or aside the COVID-19. Thank God the state government and the governor, and indeed the federal government, have also taken recent steps to investigate and find out what actually is that extra cause for this unfortunate loss of our loved ones in the state. Mr. Speaker, let me say that while this House gathers to discuss this problem on these green chambers, it is not about Kano alone. It is about the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I believe in each and every state that we have in the Federation, you have 1 or 2 cases of COVID-19. Even in the cases of those few states that have not gotten any index case yet, I want to believe ordinarily as a layman that there might be such cases in existence. Unfortunately, because we don't have enough sufficient testing centers in some of the states, you may not know who else is affected or otherwise. It is on this ground that, Mr. Speaker, I rise to seek the indulgence of this House to tell you that the 24 members of the House of Representatives from our dear state, Kano, and indeed your dear state, Kano, we are today on our knees to seek the indulgence of this House, to ride on the instrumentality of this institution of the House of Representatives, to beg and crave the indulgence and urgent intervention of one, the federal government, international donors, to help us wade into these circumstances to be able to save the lives of our people. Kano is such an implicative state. If you look at it from its situation in terms of commercial nerve center of the northern part of the country, even our social relations, the whole of the other states of the north are connected to Kano State one way or the other. Consider the over 2 million, 20 million people we have there. We need a very swift intervention. Mr. Speaker, we need the support of this House and the support of the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to sweep into action by collaborating with the state governor and the government of the state to see to the end of this crisis. Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid the way we are going in Kano, if care is not taken, the ravages we are undergoing may be worse than Boko Haram. Boko Haram, like you said in your own opening remarks, they kill through the gun, they kill through aggression, but this one kills people silently, with a choked up population, especially in the ancient city of Kano, where you have in just one local government, over 600 polling units. Dala local government, for instance, is the biggest local government in terms of population and number of polling units. 600 polling units in one local government. And these are people who are jam-packed in, unfortunately, an unpalatable accommodation system. We have this problem existing for long. This has also made things worse. The season, for instance, is the hot season. Transition between the mild season of cold season into the hot season, perhaps subsequently the rainy season. In the past, we used to experience this kind of circumstances at this epochal period. But the number of days, the huge number we are recording today, Mr. Speaker, honorable members, is unprecedented. It is not about political parties. I hear people say a lot of things about the governor or the government, or even the people. The governor is human. Those of us who are representing the people of the state in Nigeria, in the Federal House of Representatives here, as their own representative, we are also human. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, let me use this apolitical platform, despite our political affiliations to say that the COVID-19 pandemic in the country, and specifically in Kano, has got nothing to do with political affiliation. It does not respect party politics. It does not respect tribe. It doesn't respect religion. After all, you can all bear with me that Kano is one of those states that you must call unavoidably a cosmopolitan city. We have huge number of Yorubas, Mr. Speaker. Some of them are from Surulere. They reside in Kano. It's their second home. We have nothing about it. We have the Igbos. Some of them are from Enugu, some from Delta. The Delta Igbos are there residing in Kano. They are our people, and they are Kano indigenous. We have Edo people. And among the Edo people, the leader of the Edo communities, the chief of the Edo communities in Lagos is a senior brother to Sergius, who is seated here. We have his brothers and brethren as citizens and indigents of Kano State. It is on this ground and on this note, Mr. Speaker, that I want to urge each and every one of us to look at this case as a holistic case that affects the Federal Republic of Nigeria and our great people. Mr. Speaker, allow me to use what you have just said in your remarks, to stand the risk, not to stand in the risk of plagiarizing. We must have to join hands. We have to join hands with all forces, within and without Nigeria. We have to join forces with global agents and organizations who are out to fight this unfortunate pandemic. And our resolve to join hands with them, our commitment to fight this pandemic, like you have rightly said, Mr. Speaker, has to be absolute. It has to be absolute. No two way about it. The business of every government in the globe is about the protection of the lives and welfare of the people you govern. The moment that is lost, then government is out of place. Mr. Speaker, it is on this note, and on behalf of the people of Kano State and the government of Kano State, that I still have to commend the efforts recently made by the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces for scaling up engagement. He has already this morning dispatched a delegation of expert medical doctors, a team of about 42 of them. They are already in Kano. Mr. Speaker, by your leave, as we discussed in the morning, we will be, a few members from Kano will fly to Kano this afternoon to join this team of experts to see how we can move this case further. Mr. Speaker, I also have to say, without any fear of contradiction, that my governor, the governor of Kano State, has done the best he could do, and he will continue to do the best to be able to protect the lives of our people. Mr. Speaker, thank you, and may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
I believe that is not a problem, but I think that was not captured in your prayers. That should come as an amendment to the resolutions that the federal government should intervene, and I don't believe that should be a problem. So on several principles of constitutional principles, it was done in Lagos State, it was done in the Federal Capital Territory, and on the principles of equality of states and equal protection and equal treatment, I don't think that should be a problem, but it will have to come by way of amendment so that we can pass it as a resolution. Honorable Toby.
I think the motion and the prayers are very clear. But I must commiserate and extend the condolences of our colleagues, my constituents, to the people of Kano State on the inexplicable and unexplained deaths in Kano. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I think first and foremost, we must be very clear that it is Kano today, it could be another state. But what we should not be waiting for is to be waiting for another state for the coronavirus to escalate and we begin to intervene. Mr. Speaker, we have to be proactive. And more importantly, we need to get our messaging right. A situation where you have about 640 people that has died and is inescapable, you cannot explain it. It speaks to the absence of focus, the absence of leadership. If there is anything that is happening to our citizens to that tune, hundreds of deaths, we should be able to know. Now, we do not know whether it is coronavirus. Were some associated with malaria, others associated with other ailments. But, Mr. Speaker, the class of people, the age of people that are dying in Kano cannot be explained otherwise. So we must face the facts. We must also have to get to our people to know that this is real. The message, whoever they hear, whether they are the clerics or whoever, we must have to get it right. And I think this has to be domiciled in every part of the Federation. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, the fact that the testing center in Kano is not working is a pointer to the fact that we can't get it right. NCDC has to be proactive. If you are not testing, how do you determine why people have died? How do you know how people have been affected? As a matter of fact, the issue of testing is the foremost on how to prevent, because when you test, you isolate. You avoid a situation where it escalates. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, this is the very point in time that we have to wear our thinking caps. It is better that we import test kits from China than importing Chinese. We need to import test kits. Unfortunately, a few days ago, the NCDC were advertising on Twitter for intervention. And they're advertising where they want to get lab. We need to know what else we have to do. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, this president spoke, and we appreciate his intervention in Kano. We should get ready for other states. You have alluded to it, to the fact that there is quality of states. We don't have to wait for a situation to escalate in a particular area before we intervene. There must be a framework for everybody. So also, there should be a local content to our aspirations. Pandemic means that this is worldwide. If it is worldwide, nobody is coming to your aid, Mr. Speaker. If nobody is coming to your aid, what is the local content of what you're doing? I have not heard that experts or scholars have been assembled for this purpose to find a local solution to this problem. We want to hear that. With regard to drugs, with regard to testing, what if we are not able to import anything? Mr. Speaker, there has to be a local content. On the 1st of this month, I wrote an article at the back page of The Sun. Homegrown approach to this issue. We must deal with it. And now we have a situation where the testing, even when you have the centers, you don't have the test kits. We want to know what government action is to that effect. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, it will be belaboring the obvious to state that the situation in Kano will migrate to other places. Now, what we expect the PTF, Mr. President, is to have a Marshall Plan on what the states can do and the interventions federal government can bring. If we need to domesticate testing for states, let us train people and get it done. We cannot expose our citizens to this level of jeopardy. And we are just modeling through. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, we must be united in this because it is a threat and nobody is coming to our aid. So while we support the leader's motion on the invitation of the people who are responsible and the fact that there has to be an amendment to prevent this by having a framework and equal treatment for all states of the Federation, I support this motion and I call my colleagues to support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Toby. Lest I be misunderstood. When I talked about equal treatment and equal protection for all states, you have to put it in context. I'm saying what I said was that there was an outbreak, a major outbreak, a calamity almost in Lagos State and in FCT, and federal government intervened. There's no doubt there's an outbreak and a calamity in Kano, and therefore they should be given equal treatment. I'm not saying that every state, all 36 states, if you have one or you have none, that the same kind of intervention, there must be levels of intervention, but they should be treated equally within the context of whatever their outbreak is. Honestly, there's a problem with all this face masks. Yes, it's very difficult to recognize who is who.
Imagine peace because our gallant forces are working very well and our amiable, erudite governor is working very hard. Mr. Speaker, I want to first commend the leader for being like a doctor today and bringing this motion. Honestly, Mr. Speaker, anybody that has heard the news and seen what is happening in Kano, and Kano is a town like Lagos, where we have all our relations there. There is a key thing, Mr. Speaker, that we need to mention. We need to engage the community, both the traditional and religious leaders who are the closest to the people, to explain the scenario to them because COVID-19 is real. As a doctor for many years, I have not seen a disease that is as contagious as coronavirus. It is true. It is a deadly disease, and before you know it, one person can come and infect all of us here in this chamber. God forbid, bad thing. But the local people need to know this. And the only people they can listen to are their local traditional and religious leaders. I have written an amendment to be added to to the resolution that all the 24 House of Reps members, the House of Assembly members, should go to their constituencies and engage with the religious and traditional leaders in their community and explain this thing. Because we have seen so many viral videos where people are chanting they don't believe in coronavirus. And it is very dangerous, Mr. Speaker. So I want to urge all members from all the states, because it is Kano today, it can be any state tomorrow. If you play kids' gloves with coronavirus, it will deal with you. Look at what had happened in Ghana. They thought they were succeeding, and they relaxed too early. What happened? There was a spike. So we have to be very, very careful, Mr. Speaker. So I am urging all our colleagues to ensure that all our communities are aware of this scourge, this invisible enemy that is killing people. I thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Speaker.
I remain Honorable Kabir Idris, member representing Kura, Modobuga, Rumala. Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleagues, I'm from Kano State. Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to yield my voice on this very important issue concerning, it's a national issue. And I want to use this opportunity to appreciate my honorable colleagues, being someone from Kano, the phone calls we received from a lot of well-wishers from the National Assembly. We really appreciate that. Mr. Speaker, my concern is this. Mr. Speaker, my amendment is this. I'm from the village, and I represent people from the village. We have 44 local government in Kano State, and happens to be only 7 in the Coast Metropolitan City. Mr. Speaker, most of the issues we have and the testing centers we have in Kano are all centered in the city. Mr. Speaker, we have more than 60 to 70% local.
I already know your amendment, and I'm in total agreement with it. Go ahead. What's the amendment? Straight to the point.
People in Kano are commuters from the village, meaning from one of the local government outside the metropolitan. Mr. Speaker, my concern is if we can please find a situation where we can have testing centers in every local government in Kano State, that will assist in preventing this.
Okay, so Honorable Idris's amendment is one testing center per local government in Nigeria, not in Kano State, throughout the federation. So we're looking for 774 test centers. What's your second amendment?
My second amendment is this: to observe a 1-minute silence for the COVID-19 victims for the entire nation. I so submit, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. The ayes have it. Honorable Aisha Duku.
The religious leaders and traditional leaders, so as to avoid misunderstanding by the large followership when it comes to the treatment of any disease in Kano and the nation at large. I so move.
Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. The ayes have it. Honorable Chair.
Mr. Speaker, I'm moving an amendment that, in line with the objective of the motion as ably moved by the House leader, that Rivers State, as the third largest state in Nigeria, should have testing centers and palliative for the people of Rivers State, because none has been extended to us, even though we have COVID-19 cases in Rivers State. I so move. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Those in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. The ayes have it. Honorable Sejus, I think yours has been overtaken. It's the same amendment, one per local government. Honorable Waguba.
In Kano, where viral videos have gone everywhere stating that the pandemic doesn't exist and that the virus doesn't exist, that is not real. So Nigerians need to hear the voice of the National Orientation Agency now. Generally, they need to step up their game. And the second amendment is that the Kano State government should quickly, as a matter of urgency, conclude the investigations. Because for a while now, they keep saying they're investigating, they're investigating, they're investigating. We need to know what are the immediate and remote causes of this death. I so submit.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion moved by Honorable Henry Wabuba. The amendment moved by Honorable Henry Wabuba. I so move. I so second.
Honorable Ishaka.
Honorable Ishaka Ayokunle Ibrahim is my name. I represent the very good people of Ifo Ewekoro Federal Constituency. I'm from Ogun State, Mr. Speaker. My first amendment is on the prayer as presented by the House leader. I'm premised on the fact that all these principals who are the front runners on the presidential task force, you all agree with me how busy they are. So if we use the word summon, I think it's somehow heavy to summon them at this time in question. I rather say, by my own amendment, that there should be interface management with the relevant House committee, which is on health, or as the House may deem fit, to engage the presidential task force and come back to give the House feedback instead of summoning them to the House at this point in time. Then, second amendment, Mr. Speaker, is that when the President shut down Lagos, Ogun, and FCT, Lagos was assisted, but Ogun State, maybe out of oversight, was excluded. I want to amend that the federal government extend the hands of that intervention to Ogun State, and perhaps the entire 36 states of the Federation, in the first instance, should be granted minimum of 1 billion naira as intervention fund.
Thank you. Are you done with your amendment?
Establishment of test centers in all the 774.
That has already been taken. Honorable Luga.
I rise to second the amendment as moved by my honorable colleague. I so second, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it. Can we get an amendment on this federal government special intervention that the leader of the House argued that happened in Lagos or FCT, and that is now happening in Kano? It is important that there's a special intervention based on equality of states. That is what I meant. So intervention will be varied depending on the outbreak. You can't expect somebody like a state that has only one index case to ask for 15 billion. So go ahead, Honorable Nasir.
Nasir Ali Ahmed. I represent Nasara Federal Constituency and I'm from Kano State. Mr. Speaker, I raise to amend the prayers of the House Leader to include that the special intervention that has been given to Lagos and FCT be extended to Kano State too. I so amend, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Osai.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Distinguished honorable colleagues, I remain Honorable Osai Nicholas Osai. I represent local Kwani Federal Constituency of Delta State. I rise to second the motion as moved by my fellow colleagues. I so second.
Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, my amendment is one, that the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 should move to Kano or relocate to Kano so that they can now face this seeming problem that we are now facing in Kano. So there is need for the Presidential Task Force to immediately move to Kano for their operations so that they can be briefing Mr. President and the nation from Kano. That is my prayer, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Those in support say aye. Those against, please say nay. The nays have it. Honourable members, the first business of the day is presentation of one bill, and I invite the clerk to read its short title.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, Quarantine Act Repeal and Amendment Bill 2020, first reading.
The first order of the day is commencement of debate on the general principles of a bill for an act to repeal the Quarantine Act, Q2, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, and enact the Control of Infectious Disease Bill, make provisions relating to quarantine, and make regulations for preventing the introduction into and spread in Nigeria of dangerous infectious diseases, and for related matters, standing in the name of Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila and two other honorable members. Honorable members will recall that the bill was read the first time on Tuesday, 28 April 2020. Honorable members, I invite the Chairman Committee on Rules and Business to move that the House do suspend Order 7, Rule 1 to enable the Deputy Speaker take the chair. Well, honorable colleagues, we're faced with an interesting situation here. Ordinarily, the Deputy Speaker, because this is my bill together with two others, and I don't know if Honorable Sununu is here, maybe he can take the matter, but if he's not here, then we are presented with a situation where the Honorable Speaker, Deputy Speaker will come and take charge here. But that gives us a problem. My hands and my fingerprints are all over here. And when the Deputy Speaker comes, his hands and fingerprints will be all over here too. So both of us have a problem. So I think Chairman, if the Chairman will, somebody is suggesting that myself and the Deputy Speaker should exit. So I don't know what options we have. I don't know if Honorable Fulata can allow us suspend the rules so that I take this bill from here, or I can't think of any other alternative.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable colleagues, my name is Abubakar Fulata. I represent Berniwa, Krika, Samaguri, Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, I'm from Jigawa State. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I move that the House do suspend the extant provisions of Order 7, Rule 1.1 to enable the Deputy Speaker to take the chair in order the Honorable Speaker could move the motion for the second reading of the bill. I so move.
I rise to second that Order 7, Rule 1 be suspended so that we can take the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it. Yes.
The Control of Infectious Diseases Bill, sponsored by House Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila and two other members, was among the first items considered. It seeks to repeal the Quarantine Act in existence, which the lawmakers say is outdated.
The Quarantine Act, Cap Q2 Laws of Federation of Nigeria 2004 enact the Control of Infectious Disease Bill, make provisions relating to quarantine and make regulations for preventing the introduction into and spread in Nigeria and for dangerous infectious disease and for related matters, standing on Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila and two others. And now, honorable members will call the bill was the first time on Tuesday, 28 April 2020. I now invite Honorable Femi to move for the consideration of the bill be read second time.
I rise to move that a bill for an act to repeal the Quarantine Act, Cap Q2 Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, and enact the Control of Infectious Disease Bill, make provisions relating to quarantine and make regulations for preventing the introduction into and spread in Nigeria of dangerous infectious diseases and for related matters, HB 836. Be read a second time.
Seconder.
Olufemi Hakeem Gbajabiamila. I so second.
Your Excellency lead the debate.
Thank you, honorable colleagues. Thank you, Honorable Elumelu, for seconding the motion. Honorable colleagues, prior to now, we had a Quarantine Act. Unfortunately, it turns out that the Quarantine Act, which was passed several years ago, many years ago, turns out to be an archaic law.
Order, please. Order, please. Order, please.
Yes, the Quarantine Act turns out to be an archaic act. Weak and obsolete in many of its provisions. And it took a pandemic such as this for us to discover the weaknesses and the outdatedness of the act. So what does this do? This bill repeals an otherwise archaic act and in its place seeks to enact the Control of Infectious Diseases Bill. What this new bill does is to take most of the provisions of the Quarantine Act that subsist and are relevant to the present time and expunge the archaic provisions, many of which are present in the Quarantine Act. What I will do, Honorable Speaker, Honorable colleagues, is to try and outline 3-4 areas that this Infectious Diseases Control Act seeks to perfect or modernize the Quarantine Act. First, the Act has allowed the President to delegate to the Minister of Health the powers, in the first instance, exercised by the President to be exercised by the, or exercisable by the Minister of Health. Let us be clear that if in the first instance such exercise is such powers exercised by the Minister of Health, as it was by the President. Within 10 days, I believe, they still need to seek approval of the National Assembly. The first instance exercise of power is just to deal with an emergency situation. Now, this bill also seeks to do one thing. We have a very important body, extremely important, perhaps the most important body in dealing with infectious diseases, epidemics, and pandemics. But that body, which is called the NCDC, has very little power. Very little. It is a body of professionals, a body of experts, or at least meant to be, but they have very little discretion in doing their job. Now, what this bill seeks to do is to empower the NCDC in several areas, in matters of quarantine and the administration of public health and infectious diseases. The NCDC now is allowed to even do health surveillance and power to be proactive as opposed to reactive. What the NCDC can do now is once there's an outbreak, then they run there after the horses bolted the stable. But now, this bill allows the NCDC to be proactive, to investigate, e.g. epidemiological investigations and surveillance propaganda programs. So the NCDC can go somewhere if they hear that such and such a thing is happening without even any idea of an epidemic or a pandemic, and begin to take proactive steps. It also imposes a duty on all medical practitioners to provide information of a suspected case to the DG NCNC. So right now there's no duty. If you go to a medical doctor and he treats you, or he examines you, or he doesn't even examine you, but he is aware from his examination, or maybe even non-examination, that you are inflicted with an infectious disease, in spite of the client or patient-doctor relationship, this bill imposes an obligation on the medical doctor who attended to you to report that case to the DG NCNC. It also gives the DG NCNC the power to order for vaccination where there is a suspected outbreak. The trial, it gives the magistrate court in whatever jurisdiction the powers and the jurisdiction to try cases of anybody that offends or violates in any way this act or this bill as it is now. Honorable colleagues, you are aware that one of the almost embarrassing criticisms of the Quarantine Act was that the penalties for violating the Quarantine Act range from like 100 naira, 500 naira. That tells you how old or how archaic the Quarantine Act was. Even though 100 or 500 naira would have been relevant at that time, but in today's world, it goes to nothing. So the bill now raises penalties for violation from about 200,000 to up to 5 million naira, depending on the gravity of the violation. So, honorable colleagues, in a nutshell, and not to take too much of your time, this is merely an improvement on the Quarantine Act that seeks to empower the NCDC and allows it to do its job even in an unfettered way. So, Honourable Speaker, honourable colleagues, I thank you very much, and I hope that this bill will pass second reading and go straight to third reading and straight to the Senate.
My respected colleagues, my name is Honorable Chris Emeka Azubo. I represent Nnewi North, Nnewi South, and Ekusigo Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion for the second reading of this repeal and the reenactment of the Quarantine Act. There is need for us, like stated by the sponsor of the bill, the Right Honorable Speaker, the issue of quarantine in a nation is something that has to be resolved over time. Quarantine does not only involve human beings, it involves animals and plants. And considering the challenges we are facing, based on both health, economic impact, the act that needs to be amended to include powers that will support proper ways of ensuring that there are no infectious diseases that emanate into our nation. Not only with the issue of COVID as regards to human beings, but there are things that affect our plants or animals generally over time. Because the issue of amendment of the Quarantine Act will strengthen and update the challenges we're having today. For instance, we have to work hard on issue of involving modern science and technology to develop aspects of vaccine. We've been chatting on issues of developing local capacity to ensure that we test, ensure that we develop our own capacity in areas of production of vaccines. These are things that will give us room for us, so that we will not narrow down the amendment only on this, but to ensure that we develop the comprehensive part. This amendment will give us the room, especially when it gets to public hearing, for us to ensure that other aspects of quarantine that needs to be done, and also with the integration of research and development of new capacity. We are talking of COVID today. Other nations are developing capacity to test, adapting research and knowledge they have from Ebola and the HIV to develop the cost of testing kit. Senegal, for instance, have developed a testing kit that will cost about $1 million per test. If we can adapt and grow, yes. If we can adapt and make sure that our research institutes are involved, let us involve comprehensively, both from the health sector, from the agricultural sector, and science and technology, to develop capacity. Very important, to develop local capacity, to make sure that we protect ourselves against all these issues. So I am supporting that this bill go through second reading, and I'm calling that we give it all the support that it requires. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Sajos.
Mr. Speaker, ordinarily I do want to contribute to this, but because from what the mover of the draft of the bill has said now is not likely to go through public hearing. So I would have said we leave that for the committee to discuss, because we have to be very careful when we are giving so much power to NCDC. My contribution would have been if they can be on first line charge, that they will have finances to work. Because if they are reacting, so be proactive, it's a matter of efficiency. That's one. And secondly, we should be careful with vaccines. We don't want a situation tomorrow we'll have a weak government and all the conspiracies going around now. People will come in here and you'll have compulsory vaccination. If it's against my religion, what happens? Because there's a law and I don't want anything to go into my body So I want us to look at this. Like I said, I would not have bothered saying anything if it was going to go to public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I believe, I'm supposed to be a judge here. The Speaker have mentioned, or the mover of the motion have mentioned, the long period of time we have had this law, and we will have to move on. We are in a worse situation. We have to look inward to ensure that we give what will help those who are in the field and on front line to deliver what they're supposed to deliver. Sentiment apart. Other issues could come. We could address it after we are over with this very peculiar situation. This is what I will beg of us. Thank you. Osai.
Distinguished honorable colleagues, I remain Honorable Osai Nicholas Osai. I represent Doko Kwani Federal Constituency of Delta State. Mr. Speaker, I wholeheartedly support the second reading of this bill, which is in line with Section 45 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I've also looked at virtually all the clauses of this bill, and I've also seen, Mr. Speaker, that it's more democratic than the earlier one, since that it imbibed the principles of democracy into this law. Mr. Speaker, I've also looked at issues that has empowered the NCDC in Section 47 and other subsections of the law that makes it mandatory at a time where there's an outbreak in a particular areas in Nigeria. The NCDC will swing into action to be able to deal with the situation as it comes. And I've also looked at it, the clauses that give the National Assembly the power to invalidate at any particular point in time when such laws requires such to be done by Nigeria. So, having seen the various democratic clauses in this law, I urge all of us to support it because I need to praise Mr. Speaker for bringing this law at this particular point in time. This law is an obsolete law, which you have updated correctly, and we're proud of you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rest my case.
I'm Bamidele Salam. I represent the fantastic people of Ede North, Ede South, Egbedo Rejibo Federal Constituency of Osun State. Mr. Speaker, I also want to speak in support of reading of this very important bill for the second time, but I have a few observations that I want to make. The first one is the fact that a time like this offers us an opportunity to look diligently into our procedures and systems. Now, I saw my senior colleague, Honorable Asai, making some references to the proposed bill. I don't have a copy of it. And I asked a few of my colleagues who are around here whether they've seen a copy of it. Most of them said they haven't seen a copy of it. And I believe very strongly, as much as I know that the mover of the bill is a man of depth, a man of intellect, a man of details, it is still possible that there are certain areas that some of us who are less experienced and less endowed can also pick up and make input into ensuring that the law we're going to pass from here will not be such that in another 1 or 2 years, we'll have to come back again seeking an amendment of that bill. And, he read the general principles of the bill. And I want to wonder, for example, whether there are provisions there that make it mandatory for states to establish, infectious centers and testing centers as an obligation as part of the law. Because if we are compelling medical practitioners to report cases of infectious diseases, that come to them through agencies of government, how are we sure that immediately after this pandemic, we will not go back again to our usual, style of not caring about the state of our health institutions? I also want to know whether there are provisions there for social welfare for those who are victims of infectious diseases. Now, I can't talk much about all these things because I've not seen a copy of the bill that we're trying to propose to discuss here, Mr. Speaker. And I want to advise, if it is just a period of 1 week, if we agree that we're going to read this bill for the second time and there will be no public hearing, the appropriate committee of the House, we can refer it to them and then take this bill again on Tuesday next week after we might have seen copies and made our input through the committees before we come back to the final decision. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Well, this is an emergency situation. The way and manner we are sitting in the House have already defined the situation we are in. And so for us now to say we have to go through the other processes we are talking about will mean we are not that much proactive to the extent of what we are supposed to be doing. This is a worse situation, and I believe certain things have to be waived off to ensure, just like we did with the issue of the stimulus bill. The federal government have keyed into almost all that we have stipulated there. And I think we should thank God that we have been proactive, setting the pace, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. As representatives of the people, I want to beg of us that please, let's share certain things as we think should be. When this bill, I remember the law was about to be set up, it wasn't easy. Many people do not believe the importance of national disease control. I was in the house then, you were in the house, and we knew the struggle. Today, it's an advantage to all of us. We are asking for an improvement, and I think it should be given. Thank you, sir. Yes, you still want to speak? Sorry, Obonta. After Obonta, I will put the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I remain Zaman Kimai Bonta. You will know that we're in a very difficult and strange time, and like the speaking will also be. Mr. Speaker, let me join others in commending the mover of this bill, but will observe that direction is superior than speed. Mr. Speaker, I have seen the title of the bill. I have not seen the bill, the content. I was shocked when one of the contents of the bill will be giving NCDC or whatever they're called the right to do certain things, including vaccinations. Mr. Speaker, we are all aware of this, what is awash in social media, including the chiefs and all whatnot. Mr. Speaker, I want to buy and agree with the postulation of the last speaker. Mr. Speaker, why I am saying this is, I have seen the Quarantine Act. It includes war situation, emergency situations, something bigger than disease control. And if you look at this title of this bill and what we are in, we really need a bill for control of infectious diseases. If you juxtapose the two, infectious diseases and reasons for quarantine, there is a big demarcation, even though they seem to converge. I trust the intellect of His Excellency, the Speaker. But what I'm trying to say is, we should not, because of what we want to do, and speedily do greater error. Mr. Speaker, the author of this bill is a lawyer of great repute. If you give NCDC some rights, I should take a chip, and I say I want to die, I don't want to take a chip. Are you not infringing on my human rights? In line with the last speaker, if we are going to do away with public hearing, which is the integral part of lawmaking in any parliament, then we must seek for direction and not speed. The urgency we need now, Mr. Speaker, is providing solution the cure of COVID-19. This bill is a long-term case, not immediate cure. On that note, I am saying that we should apply the wisdom of direction. Can we circulate even this bill, even for the reasons of crossing the T's and dotting the I's? I have not seen it. From the paper here, it was introduced the first reading today. We're doing the second reading, the provision for the third reading, and what? The speed, in this speed, we may miss the direction and turn back again to seek direction. So I want to plead with colleagues, I want to plead with people of this motion. Can we use today to recirculate it, since we'll meet again by God's grace by Tuesday? Then we'll look at it, then we'll be able to see. Let me know if there are provisions that offend our human rights. We've been told that there's going to be a chip. In fact, that the vaccine is here already. So when we put in the chip, the monitors from UK, from US, what we are doing in our rooms and whatever. And now, there's a portion now saying, NCDC will even have a right to order these things. That was why, Mr. Chair, you observed me shaking and wondering and perplexed. I apologize, but please, let's apply restraint on the speed we are going. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, just to address or allay one or two fears as raised by colleagues. I think, I don't know if the chairman's business is here. Like somebody has rightly pointed out, this is an emergency session, more or less. And I say drastic situations call for drastic measures. Unless we are not learning, let me apologize that the bill has not been circulated. Because unfortunately for the business and rules, we have to summon them. Just a couple of days ago, and they worked night and day. So the situation did not call, or was not amenable for 360 copies and circulation of copies. But I believe, like many bills that have passed this House, sometimes we just basically need to follow the argument under the circumstances. The issue of vaccination, if you look at the language of the bill, it says the NCDC may. It doesn't say shall. It says may. Giving the NCDC the powers to use their discretion, looking at the locality, looking at the culture, and looking at how infectious and dangerous this disease may be. That is the empowerment we're talking about. It is also not true for anyone, particularly somebody of long standing or longevity in this House, to say public hearing is an integral part of every bill. I'm sure he knows the reason and the essence of public hearing. What public hearing means, after a bill has gone through first, second, and third, and through the rigors of the National Assembly or the legislature, public hearing means exactly what it says, public. That means it gives people outside, the public, the opportunity to contribute. If it's a bill, for instance, on medicine, perhaps doctors. If it's a bill on accountancy, perhaps chartered accountants. Because nobody has the monopoly of knowledge. But I'll have him understand and know that in crafting this bill, we worked with health officials. But the important thing is that a public hearing is not a sine qua non for the passage of any bill in this House. That's a fact. And many bills have been passed without. Otherwise, what it will mean, invariably, is that a House that passes thousands of bills in a year will have to subject every bill, based on his own logic, to public hearing. Let's forget about the cost. Let's forget about the time. Let's forget about the energy. Even an ordinary innocuous bill must be subjected to public hearing. But that is not the position of our law, of our rules. And to also begin to talk about chip in somebody's body. I thought we were here to address some very serious, very important issues. Many of us have talked and argued about the menace of social media and fake news. I'm not here to argue what is fake news or what is not fake news, but to start peddling those rumors in a hollow chamber, I do not think we should be doing that in this House. This bill, like I said, the essence of it is to improve on what we have all acknowledged, which is almost damaging to us, that we are operating an act that was passed in 1920 something or thereabouts, or 1960, with some archaic law. 1928. And the time has come for its review. So for the purpose of the times we're in, I think it's important that, and I'll plead with members, apologize for the non-circulation of the bill, that we pass this bill. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong if later on you discover that there's a matter that goes to the heart of the bill. You can bring an amendment once the bill is passed. But the core of the bill, the essence of the bill, is what we should keep our focus on. The details, we can work out later. We can work out later the details. And honorable colleagues, once more, I ask that we please, for the times that we're in, pass this bill for today and send it to the Senate. Thank you.
The question now is that the bill be read second. Those in people say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk is invited to read the long title of the bill.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, a bill for now to repeal the Quarantine Act, Chapter Q2 laws of the Federation of the year 2004, and enact the Control of Infectious Disease Bill, make provision relating to quarantine, and make regulations for preventing the introduction into and spread in Nigeria of dangerous infectious diseases and for related matters. Second reading.
Bill referred to Committee of the Whole. Speaker, you may resume your seat.
The bill passed second reading, while consideration for passage was moved to next sitting.
Colleagues, the second order of the day is a motion on regulating plenary sittings in the period of COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown pursuant to Order 1, Rule 1, Sub-Rule 2 of the Standing Orders of the House of Representatives, standing in the name of Honorable Abubakar Hassan Fulata. Honorable Fulata is invited to move the motion.
Honorable colleagues, my name is Abubakar Hassan Fulata. I represent Berniwa, Krika Sama, Guri Federal Council, Mr. Speaker, I'm from Jigawa State. Regulating plenary sittings in the period of COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown pursuant to Order 1, Rule 1, 2 of the Standing Orders of the House of Representatives. House was that on Tuesday, 24th of March 2020, the House of Representatives adjourned plenary sessions for a period of 2 weeks to enable members enlighten their constituents on the dangers of corona infections, also known as COVID-19. Also note that because of the lockdown order issued by Mr. President, by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria on Sunday, 29th March 2020, please effect the correction is 2020, not 2002. The resumption, which was earlier scheduled for 7th April 2020, was suspended and subsequently adjourned indefinitely. Aware of the constitutional responsibility of the National Assembly to make laws for the peace, order, and good governance of the Federation, or any part thereof, and which responsibility could not be discharged because of the lockdown order. Also aware of the provisions of Order 5, Rules 4 and 5 of the Standing Orders of the House of Representatives, which regulates the sittings of the House from Monday to Friday on every legislative day except when it is on recess. Further, aware of the stimulus plan of the federal government to cushion the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on the nation's economy, desirous to provide legislative support to the executive arm by approving measures to address the welfare of citizens during the period of the lockdown, as well as a period after the lockdown. Resolved to sit in plenary at least once every week until the lockdown order is lifted.
Motion is that we suspend our rules to allow this House to sit on Tuesdays once a week. Those who support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it.
The issue of alleged discriminatory acts against Nigerians in China under the guise of containing the spread of coronavirus was condemned by the lawmakers as moved by Representative Benjamin Kalu.
Honourable colleagues, the third order of the day is a motion on maltreatment and institutional racial discrimination against Nigerians living in China by the government of China, standing in the names of Honourable Benjamin Kalu and 9 other honourable members. Honourable Kalu is invited to move the motion.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you, honourable colleagues. My name is Benjamin Okezie Kalu. I represent the good people of Nigeria, starting from Bende Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, honourable colleagues, I'm from Abia State. This morning I rise to humbly seek the leave of this House to present a motion on maltreatment and institutional acts of racial discrimination against Nigerians living in China by the government of China. I do this in conjunction with 9 other honorable members. The House is aware that as a result of the mutually beneficial diplomatic and economic relationship between Nigeria and China, about 10,000 Nigerians, including investors, traders, workers, and students, currently reside in and around Guangzhou in the Guangdong province of the People's Republic of China and have generated massive trade volumes between the two countries such that for 2019 alone, Nigeria-China trade value was worth over $8.6 billion. The House recalls that sometimes on April 8, 2020, photos and videos appeared on various social media outlets depicting institutionalized acts of racial discrimination, maltreatment, xenophobic assault, embarrassment, illegal detentions, and forceful eviction of Nigerians and other Africans living in Guangzhou. Consigned that under the pretext of curbing the spread of COVID-19, which ironically originated in Wuhan, China, several kinds of maltreatment of Nigerian citizens in Guangzhou have been perpetrated by Chinese people and authorities, including wrongful confiscation of Nigerian international passport, prolonged and illegal detention of Nigerians in the name of mandatory quarantine, despite their having certificates of clean health, and no recent travel history, outright refusal to test or release the test results, and the eviction of Nigerians from their homes and hotel accommodation, etc. The House is worried that in the exercise of its function of protecting the interests of nationals of a sending state, as provided for under Article 5 of the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, 1963.
Order, please.
Under Article 5 of the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, 1963. The Nigerian Consul General was treated in clear violation of Article 40 of the said treaty, which requires the receiving state to treat consular officers with due respect and to take all appropriate steps to prevent attacks on their persons, freedom, or dignity. The House also recalls the troubling case of Mr. Felix Awa Elijah, a Nigerian citizen and legal resident in China who mysteriously disappeared after his abduction and prolonged illegal detention by Chinese police authorities sometime around 6 February 2019, and of which all letters and appeal from Honorable Benjamin Kalu, his representative in the House of Representatives, were ignored by the Chinese authorities. The House also consigned that the action of the Chinese authorities do not reciprocate the favorable treatment their nationals enjoy in Nigeria, but have instead put a strain on the diplomatic and economic relations between Nigeria and China, thereby endangering Nigerian businesses in China valued at billions of dollars. Also worried that the actions and inactions of the Chinese Authorities clearly establish a trend of racial discrimination as defined in Article 1, Sub 1 of the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination to mean any distinction, exclusion, restriction, or preference based on race, color, descent, or national or ethnic origin, which has the purpose or effect of nullifying or impairing the recognition, enjoyment, or exercise on an equal footing of human rights and fundamental freedom in the political, economic, social, cultural, or any other field of public life, and that such actions and inactions are in breach of several other international conventions to which Nigeria and China are signatories. The House also is worried that the actions and inactions of Chinese authorities clearly establish a trend of racial discrimination as defined in Article 1.1 of International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination to mean any distinction, exclusion, and restriction of preference based on race, color. The House is reminded that China is under an obligation to guarantee equality between citizens and non-citizens in the enjoyment of their civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights, to the extent recognized under the international law and enunciated especially in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The House is also aware that the Honorable Speaker of the House, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Geoffrey Onyema, and Nigerian Ambassador to China, His Excellency Ahmed Jida, undertook various independent and coordinated intervention, including meetings with the Chinese Ambassador to Nigeria, Dr. Zhu Pinzhon, to register Nigerians' displeasure with the incident. The House further concerned that despite the assurances of the Chinese government to arrest the situation, the maltreatment of Nigeria and China persists. The House acknowledges that it has become imperative to take further action to ensure the safety and welfare of Nigerians in line with the provisions of Section 14(2)(b) of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999. The House therefore resolves, 1, to condemn in its entirety the maltreatment, discrimination, and the xenophobic attack against Nigerians in the Republic of China, People's Republic of China. 2, urge the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and all relevant ministries, departments, and agencies to, as a matter of urgency, ensure that all Nigerians who wish to return home, including Nigerians that only visited for business, Nigerians with any form of travel document and identification, Nigerians with passport but expired visas, Nigerians with passport and valid visas who have been ejected by house owners, Nigerians who have tested negative to COVID-19 are evacuated from China and quarantined upon arrival. 3, the House also urged the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and all relevant ministries, departments, and agencies to provide all necessary financial and other assistance to affected Nigerian citizens in China who wish to seek redress in any local or international court for breach of fundamental rights, loss of property, or any other actionable cause occasioned by this maltreatment or discrimination in China. The House resolves also to mandate the Committees on Interior, Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring, and Commerce to investigate the Nigerian Immigration Corporate Affairs Commission, Nigerian Content and Development Monitoring Board. I take that again. Mandate the Committees on Interior, Local Content, and Commerce to investigate the Nigerian Immigration Corporate Affairs Commission, Nigerian Content and Development Monitoring Board, and any other relevant ministry, department, or agency to check the validity of all immigration documents of every Chinese person in Nigeria and the expatriate quota of all the Chinese businesses in Nigeria to ascertain the number of illegal and undocumented Chinese immigrants in Nigeria, and to report back in 4 weeks. 5, also mandate the Committees on Interparliamentary Relations, Foreign Affairs, Human Rights, and Diaspora to ascertain the extent of violation of rights of Nigerians in China, as well as losses arising from such maltreatment. and to further engage the Chinese parliament appropriately to register Nigerians' National Assembly's condemnation of the maltreatment, discrimination, and xenophobic attack against Nigerians in China, and to ensure the cessation of such action by its people and government, and that treatment meted to Nigerians are compatible with China's human rights obligation, and to report back within 4 weeks for further legislative action. 5, seek the concurrence of the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I so move.
Ferdinando Zewanko, member representing the group of Njikoka and Ocha Dunugofia Federal Constituency, and from Anambra State. I rise to support a very wonderful motion, heavily moved by my colleague, Callum. I still support. Thank you.
It's a very well crafted motion. So I'll just put the question. Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it.
House members also adopted a motion from 4 lawmakers urging the federal government to ensure the provision of personal protective equipment and regular release of special intervention funds to all federal tertiary hospitals in Nigeria.
The fourth order of the day is a motion calling on the federal government to ensure the provision of personal protective equipment, PPE, regular release of overhead costs, and provide special intervention funds to all federal tertiary public hospitals in Nigeria. Standing in the names of Honorable Yusuf Tanko Sununu and 3 other members, Honorable Sununu is invited to move the motion.
I am Honorable Dr. Samuel Babatunde Adejare, representing the good people of Agege Federal Constituency. I move in the motion with limited indications on when normalcy will be restored. Aware that the World Health Organization, WHO, has since declared the infection a pandemic and called on all nations to individually and collectively deploy human and material resources to fight the infection, and warning nations with weak health systems to prepare for very severe and shocking experience. The House is also aware that Nigeria is a country, is not spared from the global economic, health, and social impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. The House also notes that various arms of government at different levels of governance have been adequately mobilized and are contributing to the control of COVID-19 infection. And cognizance of the sacrifices being made by Nigerian medical and other healthcare professionals to combat the infection in order to safeguard the health of the nation, even with the enormous risk to life through being exposed to. The House appreciates Team Nigeria for the unparalleled sense of patriotism, practical sacrifices, and its contributions to national building, and that of the House of Representatives, which donated 100% of the members' 2-month consecutive salaries for the procurement of PPE to protect healthcare providers in appreciation of their sterling performances. The House further aware that the Honorable Minister of Health, during the regular media briefings held in the Situation Room of the Presidential Task Force, PTF, stated that so far 40 healthcare providers have tested positive to COVID-19, out of which 4 died within few weeks, and many have been further infected. The House is concerned about growing outcry over shortages of PPE by both practitioners and managers of tertiary health institutions, leading to continued exposure of health practitioners to COVID-19 infections, while attending to patients without observing infection prevention and control protocols due to the unavailability of PPE. The House acknowledges the provisions of the Pledge of Physicians, which in part instruct practitioners to take care of themselves first so as to be able to take care of others. The House is worried that the monthly overhead costs of running federal tertiary health institutions have not been regularly paid, with February payment made only a week ago. Coupled with increased demand for consumables to address special needs for control of COVID-19 in the face of drastic reductions of internally generated revenues of these hospitals. Cognizance of the need to effectively strengthen hospitals and the health system to enable them to provide effective health care delivery for Nigerians and to protect practitioners in isolation and treatment centers, public as well as private hospitals, and maintain minimum standards of hygiene. The House resolved to 1. Urge the federal government to provide adequate personal protective equipment for all isolation centers and federal tertiary health institutions, while supporting states to do same for state-owned and private health facilities in order to break the chain of transmission from those centers, and also in appreciation of the roles of healthcare providers and personnel during the pandemic. 2. The House also urged the Federal Ministry of Finance to pay all arrears of the overall cost to federal tertiary hospitals and to maintain regular payment as a matter of national priority.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion ably moved by Honorable Adejare and on behalf of Honorable Sununu and 2 others. I so second.
Amendment. Before the amendment, I think Honorable Luke had the one thing to say. Yes. Before the amendment. Luke.
Mr. Speaker, permit me first to appreciate the leadership of this House and appreciate all of us members for being among the first responders by not hiding in our own homes, but by coming out to legislate for the interests of Nigerians in this critical time. This is an indication that this House is really a pro-people and a pro-Nigerian House of Representatives. So, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate you and the House leadership and my entire colleagues for coming out in large numbers for us to respond at a time like this, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, again, in other climes, like I said the other day, the speech of the presiding officer of the Parliament is always subject to debate and discourse, to either add or make input or make suggestions, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, your speech today while we opened is a message of hope for Nigerians, and it conveys the thinking of Nigerians even while we were working in our WhatsApp forum talking about the interests of Nigeria. So, Mr. Speaker, we commend you for that show of leadership. Mr. Speaker, let me use this opportunity before I say a few things concerning the motion to appreciate Mr. President, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We are good at some point at criticizing, but when things are right, we don't stand up to say they are right. We want to appreciate Mr. President, the effort he has made towards fighting this pandemic, Mr. Speaker. The speech of Mr. President was a clincher and a hope for all Nigerians. And it was a call to service, a call for all of us to join our hands, not only to fight COVID-19, but to ensure that our economy are working. Mr. Speaker, to the point today, which is about giving enough PPE for our medical professionals, let me start by appreciating NCDC, the PTF, and other medical professionals who are at the forefront of the fight against COVID-19, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, the next thing we need to do is there any possible way of encouraging the local manufacturing of this personal protective equipment? Is there any possible way that the federal government can give incentives to our local manufacturers? For example, the people producing textile in Kano or Innocent Motor to be able to produce locally this personal protective equipment. Is there any way we can give them tax rebate? Mr. Speaker, on this note, I want to urge that the federal government, through Minister of Finance, would begin to look at the way to incentivize our local manufacturers so that they can produce enough PPE to be shared among our medical professionals. According to NCDC, 40 medical professionals have been infected with COVID-19, and they are the first responders. It is our responsibility, and I want to urge my colleagues that we must stand up and try to see how we can support the executive and urge the executive to make incentives to our local manufacturers to produce this equipment locally, not only for the COVID-19 era, but in the era of COVID-19, where nations are going to be concentrating their energy in producing to feed their own economy. We should start now to see how we can produce for the benefit of Nigeria and locally. Those are my humble submissions, Mr. Speaker.
Amendment is prayer 3. It must have a direction where the federal government are going to take the money. So my amendment goes this way, that will call on the federal government to expedite action in funding the Federal Ministry of Health through service-wide vote of Appropriation Act 2020 upon submission of comprehensive proposal for control of COVID-19. Because there may be extra money that the Federal Ministry of Health might still require to have. So you need to channel that money to service-wide, which is contingency. So it is better to pronounce it rather than spending outside the budget.
Any seconder? Amendment step down.
Mr. Speaker, my amendment is prayer 5, that since it has to do with procurement, that the House Committee on Public Procurement be added to join in the investigation of the procurement process. I so move.
Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it.
I remain Honorable Chris Emeka Azubog, representing the group people of Nnewi North, Nnewi South, and the Okusigo Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, I want to put an amendment on the motion by including a resolution of the House to say that we urge the Federal Ministry of Health, Science and Technology, Industry, Trade and Investment to quickly work with our local public and private research institutes to develop an acceptable means of local production of PPE, public personal protective equipment, so that we can utilize the opportunity of this crisis and turn it into put it into opportunity for the development of our local production capacity. There's a lot of opportunities that we can see that we can develop our local capacity to produce. Instead of waiting for procurement from overseas, we can develop all aspects of PPE for production and protection of our local workers locally, and that's what I would.
I rise to second the amendment as moved by my honorable colleague. I so second.
Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it. Princess Miriam.
Princess Miriam Odinaka Onoha, representing the people of Isi Alamba, Onoimo, Okigwe Federal Constituency. I'm from Imo State. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and my honorable colleagues. My amendments include that we add the Nigerian Medical Association and related medical Practitioners Registration Board. In working with NCDC, the Federal Ministry of Health be mandated to ensure strict compliance with established protocols for treatments, such as certified medical facilities and centers of COVID-19 infected persons and related infectious disease. That's number one. And this is occasioned by the increasing number of infections and infected medical practitioners who, unknowing, might also pose threats to persons seeking medical attention or treatment. And the second one is subsequent upon this one, the consequent on the first one, which is for amendment to include the need for mandatory testing of all medical practitioners and presentation of the same result, which is like a clean bill of health, for persons seeking medical attention or treatment, so that you don't come for treatment and then you go with infections.
Those in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. I have it.
Chibong, representing the people of Itubiono Federal Constituency in Akwa Ibom State. Mr. Speaker, my amendment has to do with Resolution 5 and 6. In 5, we are asked to investigate. I don't think this is the time to investigate, because if we are going for investigation, it's going to distract the committee, the NCDC and those permitted by the president to carry out this assignment. And then also, when we mandate, in number 6, when we mandate Committee of Health Services and Health Institutions to go and monitor, now we are looking at social distancing. The number is going to be so much. And so I'm thinking that we should lump number 5 and 6 together, and instead of going for investigation, we call for a small ad hoc committee to oversight. And then at the end of the program, we can then go for investigation if need be. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's my...
Well, I'm sorry, that was actually meant to be part of my speech. I inadvertently left it out. I have the names here already. There will be a COVID ad hoc committee for this time to monitor the activities of the Presidential Task Force and everything else to do with COVID. So, Honorable Achibong is absolutely correct. So we'll delete, based on the ad hoc committee that we're setting up, prayer number 5 and 6. 5 and 6. 5 and 6 deleted. Those in favor of the motion as amended, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it. Honorable colleagues, the fifth order of the day is a motion on urgent need to investigate the occurrence of dead fishes in the brackish water, ensure public sensitization and cleanup of the environment, standing in the names of Honorable Dr. Abiante and 5 others. Honorable Abiante is invited to move the motion.
Right, Honorable Speaker, and my distinguished colleagues, I am Awaji Nombe Dagomie Abiante. I represent the very wonderful people of Andoni, Opobo, Nkoro Federal Constituency. I rise to move the motion, the urgent need to investigate the occurrence of dead fishes in our brackish water environment, ensure public sensitization, and cleanup of the environment. Mr. Speaker and my colleagues, the House notes the incidences of large quantities of dead fishes, either floating or washed off on the shores of Boni and Doni rivers. In fact, as we speak, we also know that there are several other communities within the Niger Delta region, from the rivers of Ondo through Delta, Bayelsa, Rivers, Akwa Ibom, up to the mouth of Calabar River as we speak. And this started since March 2020. The House also notes that the most common of these fishes, there are others, the most common of these fishes is the croaker, popularly known as brook marriage or ona in the local dialects. And they are believed to be carried by tidal waves from the high sea to the shores and the rivers within these communities. Concerned that there has not been any explanation for this strange occurrence, except for very strong suspicion of the alteration in the natural environment, possibly leading to a change in either temperature, the chemical composition, the pH, the dissolved oxygen, etc., due to chemical pollution, environmental disturbances, or bacterial infection. We are also concerned that in the last few days, there has also been several incidents, not one, of dead blue whales. Dead blue whales. These are exotic species of the marine mammals that have been washed up around the same areas, Bonny, Andoni, Degema, down to Delta states, Akwa Ibom, to the consternation of the people. Further concerned that residents of the affected areas have already been cutting up the dead fishes, picking some for domestic consumption, while the fishermen and traders dried and sold parts to unsuspecting customers in Bonny, Andoni, Delta, Akwa Ibom, Port Harcourt, and several other markets, which may even include Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, because we all eat fish here too, despite several warnings on the inherent risk in consuming the fishes. I want to urge the House to join us and resolve as follows. I'm sorry, it's an emerging matter, and the resolutions, the prayers, after due consultations, had changed. Please, I want us to accommodate that in the spirit of the emergency and the emerging issues. Resolve as follows: to urge the National Emergency Management Agency, the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, and the Nigeria Incentive-Based Risk Sharing System for Agricultural Lending, NISAL, to provide palliatives and render support aimed at alleviating the challenges of the affected artisanal capture fishermen within the area. 2, urge the Federal Ministry of Environment to sensitize the people on the danger of consuming the dead fishes and clean up the environment and the riverbed. 3, mandate the House Committees on Environment, Healthcare Services, and Agricultural Production and Services, to Maritime, to urgently investigate the occurrence as well as ensure compliance of the relevant ministries, departments, and agencies, and report back to the House within 6 weeks for further legislative action. I so move.
Honorable Duku.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. My highly respected colleagues, I'm Honorable Aisha Jibril Duku, Gimbiar Duku, member representing Dukuna for the Federal Constituency. I come from Gombe State. I rise to second this very important motion as ably moved by Honorable Abianti. I so second.
Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. The ayes have it.
To seek the leave of the House to step down to consideration of item 6 on the order paper, I so move.
Support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it. Honorable colleagues, there was a prayer that we observe a minute's silence for those who have lost their lives during this period of COVID throughout Nigeria. Also, we must remember that the president also lost his chief of staff during this period, and there have been many others as well. I think it's appropriate as a house, as an institution, we observe a minute's silence and pray for their souls. Thank you. May the souls of the departed rest in perfect peace.
I move that the House do adjourn to Tuesday, the 5th of May, 2020 by 11 a.m. in the morning. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Dr. John J. is my name. Benue State, Boko Taka Federal Constituency. I rise to second the motion on adjournment of the House. I so second.
Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. The ayes have it.